The antidepressants kind of do a bit of a lobotomy. You lose your empathy. You lose your caring. These drugs are causing agitation, anxiety, insomnia, hostility, aggression, mania. It happens often with a dose change up or down, or starting or stopping a change, because that's what jars the brain the most, is the change.
This diagram is impossible to read, I'm sure, and that's good. Because first of all, what I want to tell you is the brain is so complicated. If you think about the physical universe, you know, Einstein sat back in his easy chair and imagined the physical universe and some of its most basic, complex, and new functions, like E equals mc squared, like the bending of light, and relativity, and so on. Well, nobody has ever sat in an easy chair and come up with anything to explain the brain. We don't have a Newton of the brain. We don't even have a Bernini of the brain, or a Kepler. If you go look up prize winners, Nobel Prize winners in neurology or neuroscience, they're going to have invented a new stain or figured out synapses. We know nothing about this. You're pouring garbage into God's most elaborate, or evolution's most elaborate, subtle, impossible to understand place, with billions of cells that have trillions of connections. Some of the cells have 10,000 synaptic connections to other cells. Some are so small you can't see them on a microscope. Some of them are running down from the brain to your spine. The complexity is beyond human imagination. Everything they're telling you about drugs working is PR points. Everything. All right, this is cell A. And this is the cell's end, where it's dropping into a space called a synapse. Bunches of packets. This is serotonin packets. We're making believe we got an antidepressant here. Here is the little places that release the packets of serotonin. They're coming out there, out the chute. They're coming out there. Now, if you can't see it too well, but there's a place here that's taking the serotonin to remanufacture it. I don't even want you to understand this because this is so ridiculously oversimplified. But I want to give you two ideas about what's really happening. So, what's happening is the brain is doing a natural process. It puts out these chemicals and then it reabsorbs them, it controls it. What the drug does, any drug that's messing with serotonin pretty much, which is a lot of drugs, it blocks the removal from here. You're flooding the engine. That's an ancient concept from when we used to have old cars. And if you hit them too hard on the pedal or gas pedal, it would flood the engine and it would gasp. Well, you're flooding the engine. So what do you think the brain thinks about that? What it does with the first dose is it shuts down the production of serotonin. So you're immediately, and that's why horrible things happen in the first 3 days, which your doctor will say is your mental illness all the time, pretty much, nowadays. He won't say, no, you're developing a serotonin syndrome, or you're getting agitation, or you're getting depressed, or, it's probably from starting the drug. So it shuts down, and then it doesn't restart for a while, and then it starts to restart and try to find a balance. But while it's doing that, the system that is taking it out, and there's a little arrow there, it may be red or something like that, and that arrow shows you that that system that is being blockaded, in technical language, hypertrophies. It says, you can't stop me by putting molecules on my conveyor belt so I can't get my serotonin out, and it builds up in strength. So you get an abnormally vigorous resistance Not only in the blockading, not putting on serotonin, but in the removing of serotonin. They're going to remove it anyway. And then finally, and perhaps the saddest of all, over here on this side, there are receptors that are grabbing serotonin. There's innumerable ones, many, many receptors. And by the way, there's multiple types. It's all nonsense. When they made up their theory of biochemical imbalance, they didn't even have more than 1 or 2 types. I've lost track of 6 or 8 or 10 now types of receptors for serotonin. So what happens to the receptors? Well, they're getting flooded too, right? So they died back. Animal studies, I have to tell you, because nobody else is, animal studies is that at 18 months you don't always get recovery from a few weeks of exposure. So, now, you think that's complicated? All right, imagine in that synapse there are 50 neurotransmitters. See, we don't even know how many there are. From genetic studies, it looks like there's hundreds. We identify a few dozen. That's how bizarre all this BS is. So you've got this enormously complex thing. It could have a dozen or more other nerves. It could have dozens of other things in this little soup, all of which is minuscule and is all intertwined and tangled about, all of it producing my ability to speak. This is more complicated than the whole universe. The universe doesn't speak, doesn't think. The physical universe isn't as complicated as your brain. Treasure your brain. Treasure your... Don't hit yourself in the head. Don't take neurotoxins. But if you come off, do it carefully. Do it very carefully.